Hi, this is Isabel on today's Q&A. So hope that you enjoy it during your lunch break if you're working, or from home if you're not working. So today's topic is about networking to get a job. This is something that's extremely important, especially in Switzerland. So I wanted to make a special video on the topic. So networking to get a job is really something that most people don't know how to do. And the reason is we are never really taught how to do this. You know, we are still in the old-fashioned ways of networking, or we are going to find a job via job boards. So the agenda for today, the things that I want to cover three things. So the first one is the concept of networking, to give you a little bit of a framework. Then I will talk about how to get a job via networking, you know, some tips basically. I will make it tips based. And then thirdly, you know, how to use the modern platforms, the electronic platforms or apps that are out there to expand and get a job that way. So to begin with, I want to give you some structure in terms of concepts. So if you watch this video a little bit later, you know, maybe via my YouTube channel or in a different fashion, feel free to comment below and ask your questions at that stage too. It's okay, you know, I will keep replying. Or if you're online today on Facebook and you want to ask a question, feel free to drop your question. I will see it on my screen and reply. So apologies for the light, it's a little bit dark. Weather is not really great today. We're still in the beginning of spring, so I'm having a hard time with lighting. Trying to move it a little bit. Okay, better lighting now. So the concepts of networking, at the beginning you basically have two types of networks. So the first one is really your strong network. So this is the people that you know very well, your family, your friends from a long time, people that you see on a regular basis, people from clubs that you belong to. So everyone tends to have this strong network, you know, basis maybe of a few people. And this network is very useful because they are the type of people that you can really rely on, that you can really ask questions to, call and say, I'm looking for a job. And they're usually the ones that will reply to you and try to help. And it's very easy for individuals to contact their strong network, again, because you know them, you're comfortable, etc., etc. This is not where I want to spend a lot of time, because the strong network, I would say everyone is comfortable with it and everyone has it. There's still some exceptions, you know, people who are not even comfortable telling their family or their close friends that they're unemployed because they feel a little bit bad about it. So this is separate. This is more a question of maybe personality and how you deal with unemployment. So this is not the topic of this video. The topic is really to make you understand the dynamics of networking and how to work on those dynamics to get a job. So the second type of networking is what I call the weak network. So this is something that a lot of people have a hard time with, and that means the people you haven't met yet and you haven't connected with. And this is what I tend to move people towards, is the weak network, is developing your weak network. Maybe you have people that you could meet, you know, via clubs or via meetups or via functions and events. And this is where you would get the best network. So again, there's two different views out there. Some people think that being around people that are like you is a good, strong network. So if you go, let's say you're a woman and you love, let's say, tennis, or you love, I don't know, fashion or something like that. So let's say you love fashion and you go to events where you're going to meet other people who like fashion, typically women. So I would say that's not going to be your you're developing your weak network, because you're going to meet people that are alike, that will be a little bit too like-minded. And this is not a good network in my view, because being surrounded by people that are like-minded is not going to give you a big breakthrough. So sometimes people ask me, you know, how do you go about networking if you're a woman? You know, do you go to a lot of women events? I think women events, it's great to give you confidence. It's great to meet other women at some point. But people who have done it can probably share this opinion, is that you tend to meet people that are like you, either looking for a job as well, or who have a similar experience. So women expats, for example, can really be a good source of comfort for each other because they're in the same boat. Basically, they are probably experiencing similar things. But in my view, that's more friendship, empathy, building your confidence, but it's not really what's going to get you your next career opportunity. So it's great. And if you belong to a women event or a women club, I think I'm not going to tell you to stop that. I think it could be a good source of, again, self-esteem and confidence, but this is not, in my view, where you're going to get breakthroughs. So where you're going to get breakthroughs that will really help you in your career is by going and approaching people that are a little bit far from you. So for example, I'll give you my example. In the last months, I've been going to tech events. I really like tech. It's something that I really believe in the future. I think we're going to all work via digital platforms. I think the way we know work right now is really going to change drastically. So I really think I'm more of a futurist. That's a passion of mine. So I like to know what's going to happen in the future and how we're going to work in the future. So I've been exposing myself to people in tech, so people in development, in tech development, people who are working in cybersecurity. So it's really far from my world. I'm a human resources professional. I work like this my entire career, so I'm very familiar with this world. Now, going to tech events and talking to people who are working in tech is a huge stretch for me. Of course, I don't understand everything that's discussed, a lot of technical things. When I go to developers meetups, I don't understand necessarily everything, especially with the cryptocurrencies. And I want to know what's behind it, but I don't understand everything. But it's okay because people are very much aware of that when I talk about my background. So what I'm saying is that by exposing yourself to people you don't know, industries and events that you don't know much about is going to give you huge development in your career, because you will meet people that give you a different perspective. So for example, for me, I'm more of a social science, psychology, human development type of person. So meeting people who are in tech is really my complement. So I'm meeting people who are different than me so that I can learn from them. And this is also where mentoring with people or networking with people who are different than you can bring huge value, because they will show you a different perspective on your resume, on your profile, on what you could do with your skills. So I find that it's really, really where you get the growth. But it's the most difficult one, because of course it shows that you need to have enough confidence to expose yourself, to talk to people who are very different from you, whether culturally, functionally, geographically. I mean, it takes a little bit of going outside of your comfort zone. But in my view, this is where you're going to get the most value. So if you're working right now, or if you're looking for a job and you want to get this break, I think everyone is looking for growth in the end. Some people love their job, but they're missing something. So we're all looking as human beings to grow, to get to the next level, to maybe get a promotion in our jobs, but we don't know how to do it. So this is where going into the power of networking with people who are not necessarily the same as us can show us maybe a piece, a missing piece that we have that we're not growing right now. So it's very common in a career where you stay in a job and you're well, established in your job, but you're not fully happy and you don't really know why. You're missing the pieces of the puzzle, and by yourself it's very hard to know what it is. And sometimes your manager won't be able to tell you neither. I mean, I've had this experience where working with managers in human resources, they don't really know necessarily how to help their employees. They can tell them which classes to attend, maybe a course, maybe take language courses, etc. But they're not going to be able to show you this missing piece. And even if I take again my example, I have my business right now, I work with clients, but there's still pieces in the puzzle that I don't have all the answers to. And I know that if I talk to other people who do the same job, meaning coaching or career or anything like that, they won't necessarily be able to show me the missing pieces. And I know it's only by exposing myself to unknown, different type of individuals that they will be able to show me. And this is what I'm working on right now, is exposing myself to very, very different profiles so they can show me opportunities and expansion that I don't see under my eyes. So you need to have this mix, and this is why also companies like to have mixed teams, because they know that innovation and creativity cannot happen with similar people. So if you hire same people coming from the same university, which used to be very much the case, companies now understand the power of diversity, and in every different way, not just diversity in terms of culture, but also diversity in terms of background, in terms of men and women, different countries, different trainings. I think now we're seeing also a revival of the self-made person. So I think the diploma, it used to be diploma was a huge thing. Having a degree and a degree from a great school was a huge career opportunity potential. But now I think I see more and more entrepreneurs that are self-made. A lot of people now start their own YouTube channel and really do very well with it. So now we're seeing also a revival of, the individual that builds their own careers and know how to tap into their potential. So there's lots of different ways you can use networking again to grow and to expand. So I wanted also to give you some very practical examples on how to develop your network via email, via telephone, in person. I've done some videos that I will link below that you can watch, also going into detail on how to network via telephone and via email, etc. So basically what I advise people is to start by meeting individuals in person. This is where you get the most best opportunity to connect. I think connecting online can be useful, and I'll talk about that in a minute with apps. There's an app I'm using right now to network. It can be valuable, but it's a little bit more, I would say, superficial at the beginning. It's very hard to connect with someone when you're not experienced in networking. I mean, when you've done it now, if you're an experienced networker, it could be easier maybe to find a phrase of connection and to find it easy to connect. It's like everything else, the more you do it, the better you are at it. But now I'm talking to individuals watching these videos who might be beginners and who don't have a network yet and want to build it. So I would say probably the best way to start is really to meet people in person, to have a base of people you meet in person to start your networking. So the way you do this is by registering to as many events as you can and as much as you have the time to do it. And this is always a challenge for most people, is finding the time and the resources and the energy to go to events. But I would say start next to you, start in your hometown or in your local market. You don't have to go across the world for networking. You can go to an event once a week. I always suggest to start with once a week. And the way I explain the calculation in my videos, how you tap into your networking, is if you go to one event per week or 2 events, let's say 1 event and you retrieve 3 business cards, you do that every week, that's 3 times 4 weeks, so that's 12 contacts you get a month. So that's how you do it. It's basically starting somewhere. I mean, no one starts with a huge network to begin with. It's built. So you will start with just a few people and then you'll have more. And out of all these people, not everyone is going to be a long-term connection or someone that will want to pursue exchanges with you. And that's okay. It's part of everyone you meet in life. Some people you stay in touch with, others you don't. I think the important message here is to really see networking as a long-term investment. So it's a little bit like when you invest in the stock market, some of this stock is going to grow, others won't, and that's why you diversify. It's the same with meeting people. Some people will bring you a lot of value in your life. They will be there the long term. Other people will disappear, and that's fine. That's just the way it works. But don't, I would say, have hopes on each connection that you make, that you rely on these connections. And unfortunately, people tend to really start taking networking seriously when they're out of a job. And this is a little bit, in my view, it's a little bit late. So when I work with people, I try to fix, this whole lack of networking in the last 10 years of their life. But I would say if you're, if you have a job right now and you're watching this video, but you haven't done much networking, do it right now. Because it's a lot easier when you have a job. Obviously, from a mental perspective, it's easier because you have a job, so you're not desperate, so to say. Your mental state is going to be much better. And of course, to introduce yourself, you feel more comfortable. I think that's where people have a difficulty, is to say, find something to say that They are looking without saying they're looking, you know, it's always a big challenge. So at least when you have a job, it's easy. You know, I'm a banker, I work for this bank, or I'm an analyst for this company. Everyone can do this. But when you're out of a job, then the whole exercise of meeting people becomes a big burden because of the psychological impact of not having a job. So if you have a job right now, but you want to grow and you want to expand your opportunities, start now. So give yourself this day, or I would say this one time a week opportunity to network. Put it in your agenda. Everything I do is in my agenda, and I know if it's there, I have to do it. Otherwise, it slips. So put it in your agenda right now. Find events. I will link up below. Meetup.com, eventbrite.com. You can find everything that's going on in your town. Find something that you are finding interesting. It doesn't have to be linked to your function or to your field. It could be something you're passionate about, where you know you're going to meet more the local market, because this is also a second issue for people who are not working, is expanding with locals. So when you're an expat and you're working, you tend to be around the same people all the time, in your same industry, you work, you go home. So one of the big challenges is expanding to the local market and meeting people from the local market. And you can do this via local events. So even if you're in a comfortable situation now, you know, try to go a little bit outside of your comfort zone by signing up for events at least once a week. And you will see that it's easy to build your network because you have a job. People will be a little bit less reluctant to give you their phone number and their details. You can add them up on LinkedIn, and you're building basically your portfolio a little bit like a stock. Look at it as a stock investor. You're building up these connections that you will be able to reach out to when you are out of a job. So it is a long-term investment. So if I meet someone today, let's say I meet someone who today works in banking and I have a job, so I'm not looking. I keep them in my LinkedIn contacts, or, you know, any form you want to keep the contact. So that's it. Once in a while you send a message, you know, how is your New Year's, you know, happy Easter, you know, you have many times during the year to connect. Maybe there's a special event that you found interesting and you forward it to this person, you know, once in a blue moon. And then maybe 2 years down the road, you are looking for a job and you are on the market again. Well, it's going to be much easier to reach out to this person that you've been nurturing the contact, and they already, you know you. You've been maybe sending them a few links of information, and they value your networking. And when you send them the message that you are now on the market and you would like to have a coffee, they would probably reply positively because you've been nurturing with them and you've been helping them in the last couple of years, sending them information, keeping them in your mind. So they will return the favor by at least giving you the opportunity for a coffee or a phone call because they see you as a valuable contact. So now you can get the harvest, the fruit of your work. So if you've been networking for a few years and you have a solid network, when you're out of a job, all you have to do is just open your contacts and identify the people, send them a message, and they're already basically ready to hear from you. They're warm up to you. It's going to be a lot easier than if you have to, at the time when you lose your job, go and do all this stuff, which is to connect with individuals, add them to your LinkedIn profile. Of course, they're not warm up to you yet because they don't know you, so they're not going to be as inclined to help you, even though now people are used to this transient workplace and they're a little bit more open than they used to be. I remember when I was doing coaching a few years back for a consulting firm, I remember in the room when I was doing the workshop, a lot of people were still very worried about having a profile online, giving their details to individuals, telling people that they are looking. And that was 2011. And now we're in 2018. The culture has changed a lot too about, being open about looking for a job, connecting with individuals on a regular basis. So all this has really been transformed, and I think for a good reason, because at least now it's not as hard as it used to be to connect with someone when you are looking for a job. I mean, before it was almost a plague to actually say, I'm looking for a job and I need 15 minutes of your time, or, I would like to exchange on your industry. People could see it like a red flag, like this person is looking, oh my God. They have the plague, they're unemployed, and it was this big thing. But now I think people are used to it, to exchange details. Everyone knows now that they have a job until they don't have a job, so they're already looking for their next stage, which is very smart. So now people are getting more organized around the whole cycle of unemployment. It used to be something that happens to you, and that was my generation, like a bad thing that happens to you when you're looking for a job. I think now people are aware that it's part of life, and they're just preparing a little bit more for it. So now they know it can happen, and probably more often than not, and they're just preparing for it. They're investing in their connections and investing in building something to last. Another way to protect yourself is to have different sources of income. This is not the topic of this Q&A, but this is also something that I think people are starting to think about, but it's not quite developed yet, is the work from home, building your own job and having different sources of income, so that when you lose your job, you don't have just your complete loss of income when you lose your job. So this is a separate topic. But really, networking can help you expand and can really help you find the contacts that you need when you need them. But unfortunately, you won't have the person in front of you when you need it. So if you lose your job and you're going to events, and also because psychologically you are in a search mode and you are in a needs mode, you want to attract the people that you need, because they will be fearful of your neediness, so to say. So you won't attract the right people at that time. It will be more difficult. So again, try to invest in networking as early as you can, so that you're not coming across as needing these people, but they're in your network. So start networking before you need it. Never dismiss anyone. That's another message I wanted to give, because sometimes people tell me, well, where can you meet basically influencers or leaders of the market? People who are executives in a company. Well, first of all, these people are not necessarily visible because they don't have time to go out there and network. They're usually, in my experience, I never really meet quite top leaders when I go to events, unless it's an event that's very dedicated to executives. And it's usually an event that includes talks and training or something like that. But most of the regular day-to-day networking events tend to be more, I would say, the middle management or juniors or something like that. So you won't necessarily meet these individuals so easily because they're very booked. And even if you meet them, they're not going to be necessarily interested in you, because they're also looking for people that will help them or that will be a good contact to expand their business, for example. So in the end, it's a little bit difficult. I think rather than to say who of influence can I meet, I would go at it as, who do I find that I have a good vibe with? So when you go to an event and you get to the cocktail meetup after the event, just go with the flow. If you find some people that are fun, that are interesting, that are, inviting with you, don't worry so much about their title, because that changes. So someone that has a job one day can lose it the next, and this is very transient. So don't build your connections based on title or level of authority, but rather on the values and how you fit in terms of just getting along and having a good conversation. So I never look at the person's title, but rather, how do I get along with this person? Are they do we have anything in common? Do we have the same, basically similar ways of looking at the world? So just go with the flow. Go with people that you find interesting, fun, that you enjoy talking to. This is going to bring you so much more value than trying to find the influencers in the room. So that's my message. Don't underestimate anybody. Just connect with people that you are finding some common thread with. So unless there's questions, I will move to the next part of the presentation about how to get a job from networking. So I don't see any questions yet in the Facebook. Okay. So The first message is really to build, again, long-term connections. So go with who you really connect with, you really find like-mindedness with, and that you trust. It's also very important. You don't want to bring people into your network that you don't trust or that want to use you, etc. So so do it that way. The other message is always offer something before you ask for something. That's not necessarily easy. Again, the example of someone who needs a job, because my experience is that people who are job hunting tend to think that they don't have anything to offer. So they look at it as I'm basically not offering anything, and the person in front of me can offer me everything. And it's not necessarily the case. And that's because people tend to associate their self-worth on their job. And that's also linked to, how you were raised, or maybe how you developed yourself as a human being. In our society, in our Western civilization, we tend to really associate our self-worth and our identity with our job. This is not the case everywhere in the world. Some people tend to also look at it more from an internal peace type of perspective, and finding your true value without being connected necessarily to a job. So I won't get into this in detail because this is not the topic, but really your self-worth shouldn't be entirely based on your career or on your job, because this is not something that lasts. So rather try to work on yourself, on being happy with yourself, and developing some self-satisfaction and autonomy and well-being. So when you have this self-satisfaction, then having a job becomes almost secondary. So by that I mean, if you have a fulfilled life, you're happy with what you do in life, you have a lot of hobbies, you have strong relationships in your life, you're interested in the world, in the bigger picture. You're not necessarily so hung up on, when can I get a job? And most of the people I talk to do not necessarily need a job. I mean, for me, again, it's linked to maybe looking at other cultures. We think we need a job to help pay the bills and everything, but it's more a plus if you look at it. I mean, women didn't even work in the past. So I think now we tend to over-associate our well-being or our self-identity with work. There's a lot of value that you can bring also that's different from work, and that's something to work on as well if you're stuck in that I don't have a job, I'm not worthy type of thing. So there's lots of things that people can do to improve their identity and their self-worth, and this is going to build your self-esteem backbone or emotional backbone. So if you're happy with what you do in life, let's say you have great relationships, you have great hobbies, you're really happy in the end as a human being, completely disconnected from a job, then having a job becomes more of a project, but it's not necessarily something that's going to bring you happiness. And really, having worked myself in a lot of organizations, and I tell this to my clients in a very transparent way, I've never received any type of satisfaction from any job I had working, at least for an employer. Now I'm in a bit in a different situation because I work for my own business, but thinking that working for a company will bring you this self-worth and happiness that you so much want is a little bit of, I think, the wrong path. It's going to be very difficult to get your self-worth from a job, because sometimes there could be conflict of interest, you don't get along with the team or with your boss, the pay is not necessarily what you think you're worth. I mean, there could be a lot of different reasons why people are not finding satisfaction. But I really caution people who are convinced that they will be so happy when they get this job with this company. I think that would be, in my view, a little bit of a pitfall. So again, when you're networking with people, don't go at it as I don't have anything because I don't have the big name on the door, in the big company, and you have everything because you're a senior leader in a company. You'd be surprised. You could have other strengths that these people don't have. And you could have some knowledge about a lot of different topics that these people don't have because they don't have the time. So you could become an expert yourself. You don't need to have a company to become an expert. Now you can learn everything pretty much from the web. So you can become your own expert and really impress people around you that don't have time to research anything. So if you have a passion, if you have a topic that you love to hear about, even if you're not getting paid from it, developing this knowledge about a topic you're passionate about will make your self-worth a lot higher. And when you meet people, you won't be necessarily the person looking for a job, but you will be this individual who has so much knowledge, a little bit like a small Buddha, if I could say, to use the more Oriental culture. Having all this knowledge about different topics makes you a very interesting human being and a strong human being. One thing I notice in this world is that people are not very strong. If they lose their job or if they don't have the career that they want, they tend to lose everything inside of them, their self-worth, their identity. If you build this backbone, as I was saying, this emotional strength, you become almost immune to everything that goes around you. So really think about these alternatives also. If you're already out of a job and you think, how am I going to get the courage to go out there and face the world and go back on track? Really think about developing this emotional strength. There's a lot of videos you can find on YouTube on the topic. I'm not an expert, but there's a lot of ways and techniques and things you can activate in your life to become a little bit more immune again to this world that goes around you, that falls and is built and falls the next day, and it's not really helping you being the greatest version of yourself. Hello, I have Annie that says hello from Switzerland. Okay, I don't see a question though, so maybe it's just hello. Welcome on this Q&A on networking to get a job. So again, to build your backbone, to build your strength, your courage to go to talk to people, really work around this, building up yourself basically and your emotions and all that, and you will be much also prepared for the big humps of job searching. You do get rejected. Sometimes interviews don't go as planned. Sometimes people do reject you also in networking events. So to go through these humps, you need to really prepare yourself a little bit like an athlete. There will be some disappointments and some failures. So building up yourself is really going to help you go through this. The other thing to get a job is to join some type of association or club. So again, being very transparent. I don't belong to a club myself or an association because I don't have one particular thing or activity that I'm really so fond of that I belong to a club. And I also have a network that's been built now for 10 years, so I don't really find the need. But for people who are starting out, I think one way to make it easy for you is to join a club or an association, because at least it's all organized for you. You have the events on a regular basis, you're introduced to people, you're basically integrated a lot easier than if you go on your own. So if you choose not to belong to any club and you just go to events randomly, the integration is not necessarily automatic. When you come to an event, people don't necessarily introduce you to people. I know they do it in some events, but it's not the day-to-day. It's not really to be expected. So you go there, and if you don't have training in how to network, you don't know how to go towards people and ask questions, you probably won't find that it's so easy for you. So maybe starting out that way by going to a club that's going to integrate you and introduce you to the other members of the club, that gives you also this emotional strength I was talking about, to give you some people need also supporters, so to say, or people who are in the same boat. And I'm thinking again about women who feel comfortable with the women events because they feel like they have similar ladies that are also in the same club and they support each other, etc., etc. So that could be a good way to start. If you're a beginner networker and you really don't know where to start, you're a little bit afraid of going to events on your own, I think the club could be the solution for you, because you're introduced, you're presented to other people, you're integrated basically. Usually it's for a fee. I think most clubs in Switzerland, they charge you a monthly or yearly fee to be member of your club, but it's really not a huge amount of money as far as I'm concerned. And also you get a discount for each event. And usually it's the same people that go to those events. So it gives you again this comfort zone at the beginning where you have a club, you're introduced, you know it's there for you, people tend to welcome you in. So it's a good way to start. And then when you feel more comfortable in networking and around people and you're talking to individuals, then you can go maybe to what I was saying, building the weaker network, going to events where you put yourself a little bit at risk. When I say at risk, it's never a life-threatening risk. It's more the risk of what do I say? Do I look good? Do I speak well? I've been through all these stages. I really, right now, to be very honest with you, don't think about it because I've worked through the humps where now I know, I do whatever I have to do, and some people like it, others don't, and I don't really think about that. But I completely understand that at the beginning, people are a little bit self-conscious about how they come across, what do they say, are they going to be welcomed in the group, all these different things. So I completely understand that, and that's why I'm saying the best way is to start maybe with a club where you have your comfort zone, and then to grow a little bit far from, a little bit outreach from that. So joining a club is a good way. The other thing that I advise is, and this is also hard, is to act like you have a job already. So when you're unemployed, again, to fight this struggle of what do I say, how do I introduce myself, you can act like you have a job already. So meaning you have occupations. So it doesn't mean that you're necessarily employed with a company, but if you have a busy life and you should do everything you can to be busy, then you will come as a busy person. So a lot of people, if you think about entrepreneurs or people who have their own businesses, they don't really necessarily go to a company and check in at 9 and leave at 6, but they're busy. They're busy making phone calls. They're busy going to events. They're busy engaging with individuals and selling and all these things. All these activities you can do as a person who's looking for a job. You can sell things on Facebook, to keep yourself busy. You can, organize a big party, and invite people. You can organize basically things for yourself that keep you busy. So the idea should be to stay busy. And that way, when you meet people, you have things to say. Of course, if you don't have anything, that's when it becomes hard. But I think if you have activities, even if you organize a big party or you do volunteering for some type of association, then it's really easy. Okay, I have a question from Annie. I'm a mentor, consultant, and coach, and what you say resonates. Well, I hope. I have a mentee here in Switzerland who's coming back to the job market after a gap for family reason and finds it quite challenging in a new culture and and then it's cut. Then the message is cut. Okay, so I guess the question is, how do you go back to networking when you've been out for family reasons? I have a lot of clients who are returning back to work, individuals. I think one of them is actually watching this video. We have a call this afternoon. As long as it goes back to how much you own it. I like this idea of owning your career, your path, including your choices in terms of family life. I think when I think about individuals, how they present their career, when it becomes a little bit more difficult is when they don't own their past. So for example, people who have gaps in the resume or who took a leave for whatever reason, not necessarily maternity, they tend to look at it as a negative, as a minus, and they come across in front of the recruiter as I don't have this, or I lack something. And this is when it becomes a little bit, you're shifting the power to the person in front of you because you're coming across as someone who's not as much as the person in front of you. So you're coming across as the weak person rather than someone who owns their choices. So you choose to have a family and to be off for a couple of years because that was best for the children. So if you come across as someone who completely embraces their choices and who completely owns their choices, it will come across as fine. I was just talking to a recruiter a couple of weeks ago, and she was doing interviews, and she was explaining to me how she would have liked to hear the story of the mom that was coming back to work. And she said, if the person had come to me and say, I was out, on maternity leave and now I'm back fully motivated, and they really come across as someone who completely embraces their choices, then it's perfectly fine. I think the problem is because people look at it as a negative, and when they come across, it's like, oh my God, I was out for 2 years, I'm not as good now, I probably am not as good as the next person you interview, my skills are a bit not as sharp, I don't really understand the new way of doing this thing. So they make themselves, and it's really, again, we go back to building your emotional backbone. I think it's really about finding that you're good enough, that just because you were out for 2 years, you haven't lost all your skills. On the opposite, I think most people tend to do online training, or they take courses. Most women now are not completely out. I mean, they take courses, they keep aware of their field. So it's just a question of not maybe having an employer, but doesn't mean you're completely out of the bandwagon. I mean, it just means that you're not present in a company. Annie is saying, I find that lack of confidence sends people back. Yes, it's definitely, I think once people leave, and I don't know exactly why, once people leave a company per se, they lose their confidence. It's almost like they associate, and this is maybe a topic of research that I would be happy to actually work on. Why is it that people, when they're no longer with a company, they lose their confidence? So because they don't have a name associated with them, maybe. I know I was talking to someone a week ago, and she was saying that she felt more confident when she found a job again. And she was working for herself, and she was doing okay, but she felt more at ease having a title and a company associated to her name. So this is maybe something that will change also as more and more women now are going freelance. And I'm a big advocate of the work from home, of course. I'm a big advocate of building your own business because I think it's more sustainable. But I am faced with this whole, I want my name associated with a company. I feel more confident. And this is also based on the family and the friends and people around us. Maybe also the generation where I think now younger people are starting also their startup and their business. But I think my generation, for example, you have big names. It's always a satisfaction to say your child is working for a big bank or big insurance company, or just the big multinationals. I think people tend to associate their worth with the worth of the company almost. So I know when I was mentioning at some point I was interviewing, and I was working for a big not-for-profit sector organization, but I was also potentially interested in the United Nations at the time. Of course, I moved away from this choice, and I'm quite happy for my own sake. But I know at some point I was mentioning the United Nations, and people's eyes starting to glare like, oh my God, this is the United Nations. And I know it's the same type of effect when you say I work for, I don't know, big name, big bank, or UBS, or I don't know. It's there's the association of almost the power of the name of the organization, and I guess the money and the prestige is the word I was looking for. It's like if you say you work, it's the same with brand names. If you mention BMW or Audi or all these names, it's like people associate that with wealth, with success, with prestige. If you say I have my own business or I work for a smaller company, it doesn't have the same effect. And people are looking for self-worth and for validation from others. Most people are. So that's why they tend to associate success and prestige with brand names. This is something I'm really struggling with, especially with clients, because in my job, when I'm trying to find alternatives, sometimes you don't find a job with a big brand name because there's no need, there's no openings. So when I work on alternatives with clients in finding other ways of making a living and building a career, I have a lot of struggle. Because again, people tend to be still very attracted to the brand names, and they don't really see a lot of other options in their eyes, or the options are not good enough, which is a problem, I think, because you prolong your unemployment period by still wanting to shoot for those big names. So that's one consequence. And you also, even if you do find a job in those companies, you realize that probably you have the big names, but you're not necessarily fulfilled. And I like how Tony Robbins talks about, being fulfilled and what fulfillment is. And it really includes, being fulfilled as a person, not just as working for a company or being successful, which is really what most people are targeting, is the success of having a big job in a big company and all that stuff. They're not looking at fulfilled, the other pieces that are necessary. So I know it was a long answer, and I'm not sure I was very targeted on that one. But yes, for people, practitioners, consultants, coaches like us, I think knowing, maybe having researched a little bit more where fulfillment is coming from, and happiness and satisfaction and self-worth, and trying to convince or to influence our clients to research this piece a little bit more, so that they can find some answers and not necessarily focus so much on a job in a company, is quite difficult, because I think the culture is still very much pushing for that. Family, friends, I think everyone is also pushing people to find a job with a big company and to find their self-worth that way. So we're also fighting against, I would say, culture and society. So it's always a catch-22 there. Okay, Annie is asking, if someone is struggling, would you advise setting up your own company and changing their self-narrative and branding to present themselves in a more self-empowering way in the job market? The idea of looking down on employment gaps. Well, yes, this is part of my job. That's why on my package I talk about finding career solutions. And when people contact me, of course, their narrative is help me find a job. So when I talk about solutions, they're a little bit more confused, I think, because again, going back to, in most people's heads, success is finding a job with a company. That's their mental frame. So it is a challenge to move people towards that, but it's not something you can do instantly. When people work with me, we have conversations and I explain a little bit what working on your own means and building your own business. Of course, you need a business idea. So it's not so easy also from the client perspective, because they still need a business idea. They need to know where they're going. They need to know if they're willing to work on their own. I know the feedback I received from somebody recently who stopped doing her own business is the fact that working on your own is not easy. She had to work a lot on social media, which wasn't really exciting for her at some point. So yeah, it's not perfect for individuals, because of course working for a company makes it easy to some extent. You know in the morning you have a job to go to, you get paid at the end of the month, and that's it. Whereas if you build your own business, you have to really change completely how you look at things, and this takes a long time. I went from being an employee to being an entrepreneur. It took me 8 years. I started in 2010 making the shift. We're now in 2018 and I'm still learning every day. So I understand really the blockage, because I was there 8 years ago. So I know the type of individual I was 8 years ago, thinking there was no alternative than going to work and being unhappy and just pushing, every day for, working day to day. I'm not meaning that my entire career was difficult, but most of the time, as I said earlier in this video, I wasn't happy, working for an employer, but I thought that's all there is to it. You go to a job, that's how I was taught, and you do your hours and you do your job and you get paid at the end of the month and you kind of clench your teeth and do it. So I didn't see all these other opportunities around me, but they're here. And I'm trying also to tell people that they are there for them. But it's a little bit like the cave story, with Aristotle. People need to be, they just don't see anything there in the cave, so they need to really see that there's light outside. So it takes a long time. I think the mindset, the question here is to change mindsets from looking for a job to setting out on your own. It's not going to be instant. It depends on a lot of things. Some people are more open than others. I was able to have conversations with individuals. I'm going through that right now with one person. I went through it with another one. It's really reinforcing their strength and really telling them to go and do it until the end and really give it a good shot. And you will have two results. Some people might find that it's the right path for them and they love it. I know one person who's fully going for the entrepreneurship choice right now and she's really enjoying herself. And other people test it and realize, because I always have a test period in my coaching, and some people come back and say, you know what, I really think I want to look for a job. This is not the right thing for me, and I completely appreciate that. Some people might not be ready. I know I went through that stage a few years back when I wanted to be on my own, but I wasn't ready. So there's the timeline. Is it the right time in your life? Some people do need money immediately. They have bills to pay and they're in that stage of their life where they need the money, immediate money, and they don't have time to build up a consultancy or a business. Some people might not be ready because of the noises around them in their families and friends, that everyone is in a company, and they feel that they want to be also in a company to look good with their friends. So the surrounding, people who surround you, it's very important. You're a representation of the people that are closest to you. So if you're surrounded by people who are in a dead-end job, working long hours and unhappy, you probably are convinced that that's the only way to go and there's no other possibility. So whoever is surrounding you, how they make you the vision that you have, the mirror effect. If you see miserable people in their job around you, probably you're stuck in that same page and you can't get away from it. If you see happy people who have their own business around you, then you think, wow, this is not that bad. So surrounding individuals is important. Culture is important. Which culture do you live in? Are you in a culture that's influencing you to be an entrepreneur? And I'm thinking about this because I was in Canada a couple of months ago, a few months ago actually. And over there, everyone is very enthusiastic about being your own boss and starting a business and all that. You come to Switzerland, there's a lot of potential, and there's a lot of groups that want to start businesses, but it's not in the culture. It's not as I would say marketable, I guess, in front of others. So the person who's starting their own business, it's a risky person, that's, oh my God, you're starting your business, are you sure, and all that. So the culture is also a big part of it. So again, all these things are roadblocks to an individual who wants to start their own business. So need to be a little bit careful about that. So how long is the test period? Annie is asking. Well, my coaching lasts as long as people need to. I don't have an expiration date. Some people test within a couple of weeks or a month. Other people need a little bit more time. So I don't put pressure. I just want to make sure that the person is ready and had time to really weigh out their options. So yeah, that's how I work. I don't put pressure. I let people find their own energies and what they want to do with their future. It's a big decision, and again, I'm saying it's not instant, and some people might go back and forth as well. They may at some point start something, then they go back to employment. Sometimes I get an email 2 years later saying, oh, and by the way, now I've changed back, etc. So it's really work in progress. And I said this in my video when I was interviewed by a coach on intentional living. I said, it's work in progress. You develop yourself during your entire life. So sometimes there's right timing, and sometimes it's just not the right timing. And you just have to appreciate that, to give yourself also a break. So that's why, going back to questions about people returning to work after a long break or after maternity leave, it takes time. You have to give yourself some time to really find this opportunity that you need, but also to, again, build up your strength so that you're not disappointed when people don't offer you a job the first time you have an interview. Going back into it's like you stopped exercising for a while. You need to give yourself some time to go back on track, to start slowly, and to have interviews and get feedback and readjust. So it takes time. But again, if you believe in what you do and you like what you do, at some point people will offer you an opportunity. But don't really put all your focus on the job with a company. You can do a lot of things as an individual, and it doesn't have to be linked to an employer. So in terms of filling a gap, so when you're looking for a new opportunity after a long break, of course, starting a business or doing something on the side is definitely something I would recommend, for sure, because the gap is building up, and again, because networking takes such a long time, you may not have the opportunity right when you need it. So you need to think about that. I'm just taking something to drink. Any more question? I see that time is running, so I just want to make sure I get a chance to talk about the new apps that are available to network and all these things. So now to network, you have easiest methods that are mushrooming a little bit everywhere. Of course, I still advise to meet in person because I think it's a lot more valuable, I think, and a lot more personal. But there's a lot of apps now that are happening to make your life easier in terms of networking and going back to work, especially if you've been stuck for a while. So some of the names I wanted to give you. So of course, LinkedIn is the most known one. Very, very much a great, I call that the friend of the unemployed person, because it's really a way you can find job opportunities, you can add people, you can share information. There's a lot of training online as well on LinkedIn. So I would say it's probably the biggest one right now, but there's other apps that I find useful. So I'm using Shaper right now. I said I would say a few words about Shaper. So it's spelled SHAPR, and Shaper is basically there to help you connect with individuals. But the great thing is that the network comes to you. So when you're on LinkedIn, you have to research profile and ask them to join. And most of the time you can't, because you need enough, you need to have a premium account to send an email. Sometimes you don't even know who you want to add because you don't really know what you need. So Shaper is great because it gives you, it's based on keywords. So you would put all the keywords in your profile of things that are important. Let's say it's your main job. So let's say you're an accountant and you're looking for a job as an accountant. You would put accountant, treasury, I don't know, all kinds of words linked to accounting, and they will match you with people that have the same kind of keywords. So this matching with keywords is very useful because, of course, the big benefit is that you find people that are like-minded or in the same industry or doing similar things. So in terms of finding the appropriate network, which is always an issue, it's very good. Again, my little, I would say, minus to that is that I like, again, the power of the surprise network, or people that are not at all the same as you. But I think for a start, for someone who's not very prepared to go out to meetings, I think Shaper is great because, again, you have 20, I believe it's 20 contacts sent every day that are connected in some format with your background. So similar keywords, similar interests. And you could also find potentially people that would be in a place to give you an interview or to at least listen to your story. And you don't have to say you're looking, obviously, you just say, what you're looking for. Is it mentoring? Is it building up a business? Is it exchanging? You can do it via Skype. So you can choose all these different functions, how you want to meet. I find the great power also is that I find you can just do a Skype meeting, which is what I'm doing right now, is offering Skype meetings. It's short and you're able to connect with a lot of individuals without having to go places. So first plus that I see in the application is the fact you're sent 20 contacts every day, so you don't have to go and find the contacts. Second plus is that it's based on keywords, so you're not wasting time with people who are not relevant to you. They tend to be relevant to you in some form or another. They tend to be also people that accept to talk to you, otherwise they wouldn't be on Shaper. So people who are open to networking, who are in that same spirit, so you're not faced with blocks there. And the third advantage is that it's free, so you don't have to pay for anything. You just connect and there will be a match at the end if this person wants to meet with you too. And you can chat online. So it's a great, great app to develop a network. I have 2 conversations right now. I started a week ago. So again, it's not necessarily we get tons of matches because it's not the goal. The goal is really to match with relevant people. Annie is saying, in my experience, spread your wings wide and internationally. It's possible to work remotely if your current residence is limiting for opportunities. Yes, absolutely. I talk about that in my material when I do videos on how to create opportunities. I think I did a Q&A recently where I say expanding, whether it's geographically, intellectually, opportunities wide. Opportunity does not like the day-to-day routine. So opportunity is basically the random meetings. It's the person you didn't expect at the place when you didn't expect. So definitely, yes, keep your mind open. That's definitely a good feedback. So to go back on the application, Shaper is great. If you want to download it, it's available via all the downloads possible. So it's a free way for you to get immediate network and being able to have those conversations with individuals that can bring you a step closer to your objective. Another one is Bumble. I think it's a little bit used for dating as well. I haven't tried it, but apparently it's also one way to meet people in your local geographic arena. And also it's same thing. But I believe that women are the ones who choose. And that's what I understand. It's to protect women against undesired connections. So I think women are the ones that choose to meet or not. So that's called Bumble, but it's also one that I've seen around. So again, there's lots of apps now that create meetings, professional meetings very easily. Sometimes they're not necessarily focused entirely on professional. I think now, and I was talking about that with someone, the difference between personal and professional is also blurred a little bit. So you will find more and more tools online that help you meet individuals at large. But I think what I like about it is the matching of the experience. At least it brings you closer to your industry, especially if you're looking for a job. And the other advantage is also a local market connection. Because if you worked abroad and you come to Switzerland and you go to events, you may not meet the right person. You may not find people who are also based in the area that you need. The good thing with apps is that you can calculate all that stuff. You can say, you know, where you want people based in the city where you are, where you're looking for a job. You're not interested in meeting people from another area. So you have the power to choose what kind of connections you want and all that from your phone, basically. So I wanted to talk about that to end the Q&A because we're in 2018. Again, going with jobs are changing now, going more digital in my view. Now you do everything with your phone pretty much. It's a little bit scary, and at the same time it's also a huge opportunity to really get the type of opportunities that you want. I mean, we all know that networking is a long process, so I have a feeling that with apps it might cut the time span a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying that you can find a job in one day by being on an app, but it could cut through the chase a little bit by targeting more, and this is where apps can be useful, targeting more, better quality, better relevant network. I will be pursuing some of these things in how to solve human resources problems in the next month, going to events where we're really involved in basically disrupting the HR function as well. I'm really interested in seeing that in my lifetime because I think we're still going with the old fashion of recruiting people now. But anyway, I think apps definitely are one way forward in terms of how to cut through the chase in networking, how to get better network, how to get better opportunities. All that is free, most of it. So really don't wait. You know, if you're now in a situation where you're looking or you want to change, use the power of the internet and of the apps to get you going, join a club, as I was saying, to get started. There's really no reason why you can't tap into the opportunities of networking to get a job now with everything that's available to you. Again, if I missed your question or if you think about a question a little bit after this video, feel free to ask it. I will reply. This video will go on YouTube as well and LinkedIn. So there's no more question. I will close the Q&A for today. Any more questions? Thank you, Annie, for participating. I think it was very enriching, all the questions that you asked about, especially people returning to work, which is a huge topic. Happy to talk to you also offline about that because it's definitely one area that I'm interested in building up for the future. So definitely happy to talk about it. Okay, thank you to you. I will talk to you soon. Don't hesitate again to ask questions. Hope this video was providing you with some insights. I will talk to you soon. Thanks.